Hello and welcome to ThePrint. I am Mohana Basu, Assistant Editor at ThePrint. And today we have with us Anita Mani, who has edited this beautiful book called Women in Wild. Now, this is a collection of stories about women wildlife biologists in India who have, broken the proverbial glass ceiling to achieve a lot in the space of wildlife conservation, wildlife research, really pushing boundaries in terms of what was expected from them, from their families, in respect of their genders. But this book actually brings forth a number of stories which tells you that when there is passion, then nothing really can stop you. Congratulations on your book. First of all, let me congratulate. The first chapter itself is phenomenal. I mean, I was completely blown away by it. Can you tell our audiences a little bit about, that particular chapter? It is, of course, about Jamal Ara. She's so far was known as the mysterious bird woman of India, but now some of that mystery has been
cleared.
Solved.
Well, thanks, Mohana. I think let me at the outset say that the weight of this book is carried by a cast of brilliant writers. I mean, and I had just the joy of editing their work. So, and yes, the first essay was on Jamal Ara, and in fact, this is the first published profile of Jamal. She's been pretty much buried in history for decades. Nothing is known of her work, and in a sense, and Salim Ali gave her the title Bird Woman of India, but even that was very little known. Even seasoned bird watchers would find themselves at a loss as to who was this bird woman. And I think Raza has done a fantastic job in sort of setting the context, and I think with painstaking research on Ara's life, tracking down her family, and speaking to them for the book, as well as it's a story constructed from Ara's published material and material published about her. So in a sense, it's like literary forensics.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely,
yes. It's because we had no other material to go by on. There's no one alive who knew her other than her daughter, who now lives a retired life in Ranchi, and that's whom Raza finally tracked down to interview for this book.
Right. I mean, I would not like to give any spoilers, of course, but I'd definitely, tell my audience that it is very interesting to note that even though that, she was such a prolific name at that time, she appeared in a lot of publications, but still when she disappeared, it wasn't like her male colleagues tried to figure out what really happened there.
Yeah, and I also see this is when she died, when she worked and died, this is all the pre-media era, right? So published work was only in print, and a lot of people thought Jamal was a man because the name is can be deceptive.
Yes.
So in fact, when the book came out, a lot of people wrote to me and asked me. We have her book. A lot of people have her book, Watching Birds, but a lot of people simply assumed that it was a man.
Right.
So yeah,
I think that also sort of tells us why it's very important to have books like these. To sort of change that perception of what is appropriate.
I think one needs to have the historical record right.
Right. So, can you tell us about how this entire book came about? Because where did this idea sort of generate from? How did you guys go about identifying the writers and the people who were profiled?
Right. I mean, I think even before this book came along, because of the family hobby of bird watching, we've interacted with many wildlife biologists. And I think their work, the kind of research that they do, the kind of environments in which they work, and the science that they uncover, I mean, I found it fascinating, as to how the pieces came together. And when I started the Indian Pitta imprint, which was also last year, and our first 3 books have come out this year, I was very clear that one of the books that the imprint would bring out, the first set would have to be a book on field biologists. And then I thought to myself, why not write about women field biologists? Because I think women are underrepresented. I mean, in media, in books, in every aspect of media actually, and in recorded history. So, and I think it's important for us who have the privilege of being able to publish on a platform to be able to add to that body of information. Right. So, and then I realized that, you know, because they were women, their challenges were unique, and their stories were therefore unique. And that's how the book kind of took shape.
Right. In fact, this is a very good example of how beautifully women can write women. You know, that whole that lens, that gendered lens, is sort of removed, and so the stories will tell you, of course, about their struggles, but it does give the right amount of focus to the kind of work, the kind of science that they bring out, and it doesn't take that away from them just by focusing on the gender. So was that a conscious decision that you made while editing?
Not in a sense, no, because my focus was really on finding people who knew their subjects well.
Right.
That was paramount, because when I started putting together the concept for the book, I was quite clear on one thing, that these would be long form essays, and because I think you need to be able to give space and time to a writer to be able to really get under the skin of a person, and I think it's hard to do that in a compendium of 50 or 100 profiles, because they serve a different purpose. My purpose was to document the journeys of these women and not simply the outcomes.
Right.
So given that, it was important to find writers who knew their subjects really well. So gender was not a filter, but I was very happy at the end of the exercise that we have women writing on women, but we also have 2 of the essays written by men.
Right.
And I think to their credit, I think their lens has been no less unfiltered. And if you look at it, we have the photographs of the various biologists in the book, of course, but you will rarely find a description of how the women look.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
And I think that's really, that's really something to think about, because it was not about, it is not about visual perception of how someone looks. It was really about their work, about how they thought, about what shaped what they did.
Right. That's exactly what I meant by, women writing women, because I think everyone knows internet is full of these memes about how men can sometimes, focus on the outer characteristics when they write about women in these stories. But, while you were editing, what were the points that really stood out to you in terms of why are women, biologists or wildlife conservationists, why are they different? What makes them different from men?
What makes them different from men? I mean, I think one, you have to first look at it through the lens of the field, which is wildlife biology, and the demands of the work are unique. It tends to be a fair amount of field work in difficult circumstances. It tends to be long hours spent away from family, in remote locations, more often than not, and many of these women juggle. Sorry, let me not come to the women lens yet, but the work is different from the kind of work you see performed in a lab environment or in a corporate environment. Given this, and then for a woman to take on a job like that, you realize that the challenges therefore multiply. Many of them speak about how wrenching it was to leave family and children behind to go off into say field expeditions, but how that was equally important for them.
Absolutely.
I think Usha Lanchungpa talks about how she was, I think, on a expedition to a very, very remote area of Sikkim, and she was expecting her second child, but didn't dare reveal it to the team lest she be taken off the group for the expedition. So I think women have to deal with all of these challenges, and I think given that and the demands of the field, I think it's a very unique crucible within which to operate.
Right. I mean, in fact, there was another woman, the name is not coming to me right now, but who also talks about having had a miscarriage, and then immediately after that...
Actually, presenting at a meeting and having to put that, exactly. I mean, these are and we all know how difficult that can be.
Right.
And these are situations that are unique to women, but they didn't differentiate themselves in a sense. I think that's what equality is about.
Exactly, right. But that it also, I feel like that one of the challenges that they did face was this is a job that also faces the community, and sometimes the community members that they need to interact with are not ready to interact with women because they have not been exposed to
True.
So
True.
that also provides an additional challenge.
Yes, it does. And in fact, I think I think in the essay on Divya Karnar, I think Divya talks about this, about how her first assignment was in, I think, in Rushikulia in Orissa, working in a community where their women would not step out, and when they did, they would step out only with their men. And here she was, doing research on the beaches at night because she was studying turtles.
Yes.
I mean, so it's I think, but did she find acceptance? Yes, eventually. Did she get her research done? Yes. And I think that is the persistence.
Right.
You don't let gender get in your way.
Right. In fact, there is a mention of this, them having to actually hear sentences like, do you want to get raped? And things like that, because it's not just what they are going to face, but also their peers also can at sometimes be a hindrance, right?
And sometimes it's just it might actually be a case of a colleague being protective, but it's also a limitation.
Yes.
So these are all challenges that women face, and I think we need to understand that these are challenges that are unique to women in this field. So in my mind, when I was planning this book, it was about how do women cope, how do they achieve, and what is their journey, because these women have all achieved, because the criterion for profiling these women in the book was we wanted to profile women field biologists.
Right.
That was an important distinction, because field biology is very different from other branches of biology in terms of what the effort is, what the profile is just different. I'm not saying it's more difficult, better, nothing. There's no judgment there, but I'm saying it's just different.
Right.
We wanted to profile field biologists who had had substantial impact, on the issues that they were pursuing, or they had achieved substantial impact by the outcomes that they had fashioned, and whose work had had a significant impact on the landscapes that they were working in.
Right.
So these were some of the criterion that sort of was mentally running through my mind when coming up with the list of women that we could profile. And trust me, and I really want to emphasize this is by no means an exhaustive list.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's already a dozen more women who could be profiled, but like I said, we were very clear that we wanted to do a long form style essays in the book and not short chapters.
Right.
So when you do that, then you're limited by the amount of space you have, right? So we had to pick.
So maybe we can hope for a part 2.
Maybe. I mean, there are a lot of women who deserve. I mean, whose work needs to be written about. And all fascinating stuff.
Right, absolutely. So coming to the story of Dr. Divya Karna, that is the one that you've written a couple, but that's one of the ones. Why I'm bringing it up is that a lot of the work requires a lot of practical thinking. You just cannot put yourself in a silo where you say that okay, we need to save so and so species. There is also, like we said, there's community engagement. But what is interesting was that here's a fish, a researcher who works with fish, trying to conserve fish, but as part of her awareness program, she actually holds these talks, these walks through fish markets, talking about the diversity of fish that is available there for the people to eat. So can you tell us, the audience a little bit about where this thinking comes from?
Right.
Because we see a lot of, activism around veganism, around vegetarianism, becoming vegetarian.
Yes.
So, but here we have someone who's working on the field.
Right. I mean, let me start by saying that some of the wildlife biologists I've met are among the most practical people I know. And I think speaking about Divya and her work, I think there is a strong thread of social sciences thinking and social sciences work in her conservation projects. It it's, as she says in she shares in the essay, it's not just about the wildlife, it's also about the people.
Mm-hmm.
So the minute she knew that she was interested in studying marine the marine ecosystem, I think she also realized that she would also have to start thinking about and working with people whose whose lives were interfaced with that ecosystem.
Right.
And in this case it was the fishing communities.
Right.
And I think she's expanded that expanded that idea, and I think she's taken that argument forward when talking about sustainable keeping our fish consumption sustainable. You know, it's not practical to expect people to stop eating fish. It's part of the culture of many people. It's part of many livelihoods, right? So she turned her focus to sustainable consumption of fish, and I think that comes. There are two patterns that you can see. One is eating fish whose populations can be sustained when they are caught only at certain times of the year.
Right.
So that's what her project In Season Fish is about, which tells you that if you're on the east coast or the west coast, and which month which fish should you be eating.
Right.
And then taking that forward by saying that if we all ate a more diverse fish basket, then we would not have wholesale loss of the populations of A species or B species.
Right.
And as she studied this further, she and her team found that our traditional recipes call for a huge diversity of fish. And you know that that essay starts with that little visual journey through the Marina Beach market. And you know, I am from Chennai and I've been to that market many times. I know exactly what she's talking about, because there'll be many kinds of fish which you'd be hard pressed to identify as to what they are, but they've all traditionally been caught and been part of people's plates.
Right.
And so she's been trying to work with restaurants to bring it back to tables, with consumers to help them understand where your fish comes from and what are different kinds of fish that you can eat. And I think that's the brilliance of her work, because here is a wildlife biologist who is trying to look at a solution that brings wildlife and communities together.
Right.
You
In
know?
fact, she talks about how a lot of that gets wasted. A lot of the
I thought the bycatch loss was horrendous. I mean, just look at that. I mean, that is unsustainable.
Right.
So we have to eat a lot more of what we catch, and we have to be careful about what we catch. I mean, you know, to put it at a very simplistic way, which I'm sure Divya would, but I'm saying it from understanding it a layperson's point of view. You know, diversity is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like you said, having a more practical approach that does not leave out communities who are dependent on you know, certain on these kind of like on fishing, or even a lot of other communities have live in close quarters with wildlife, and you cannot just have these blanket top-down approaches on them. So, you know, coming to, you were talking about some of the work that they've done that is unique and is trailblazing, and that brings to mind Dr. Uma Ramakrishnan, who, you know, is basically a wildlife geneticist. So, her work is focused around looking at sequencing the genomes of animals, but not from animals. So she actually tracks animal poop, right? So,
yeah, that's among the sources. I mean, scat is a one of the source materials from which you extract DNA, from which you sequence the gene of that animal. Yeah, right.
So you know what? I mean, her work, of course, stands out because right now it feels very current. Her, in fact, one of her works was about the Simlipal Tiger Reserve and how the tigers there were becoming more black. Their black stripes are becoming wider. In fact, I'll link a story in our description below. We've also covered it. So, you know, looking at all the different stories, how does this come across? Because you know, why did her story sort of stand apart?
Well, I think in terms of the the way she has impacted the direction of tiger conservation in India. I think it's brought a whole new paradigm in terms of how we identify and count tigers, and also how we look at issues such as isolation of tiger population. I think her work underscores the importance of having links between tiger populations to maintain a healthy genetic diversity. Now, you cannot do all this by simple observation. You need deep data of the kind that only genetic study can provide. So her work has brought in a completely new paradigm to the way we understand the science, of the species that we are trying to conserve. And I think for just that, I think that was among the reasons why she simply had to be in this book. I think she's had substantial impact on the science, on the community, on the way conservation is done. The second aspect is that, and that's something we realized only after the essay was written and done, is that her journey, it was not a straightforward journey. And there were times when she had to do things which she didn't sign up for, but were handed to her by fate. But the perseverance to get through all that, right. You have to keep at it and look for solutions and do your very best every single day. And that's a very simple credo, but that's what works. Right. And that's something that we for just that alone, I think she's a real fine example, and that was an additional bonus insight that one got after the essay was written.
Right. So I mean, we can't really talk about all of the women who were covered in this particular book, and that is exactly why you should be getting your own copy of the book as well. But what to you is one of the pressing needs? Like, what pattern do you see among these women in the terms of their support systems, or the kind of drive they had, or the kind of early exposure they had that helped them achieve some sort of success in this field that was previously completely male dominated?
Right. I mean, there are examples at both ends of the spectrum. On one hand, you have someone like Jamal Ara, who had no support system and who really didn't even have formal education to fall back on, who was completely self-taught. But I also see that for several of them, supportive parents, who sort of took them out. I think Nandini who talks about how her father used to take the family out every weekend, I think, and they were lucky enough to live in Goa, which is wonderful from a nature experience point of view, to go out and experience what the wild had to offer. And her parents also put her in a school which is which is a experiential school of the kind that we're still talking about today, but which was functioning in the 90s.
Right.
And those experiences, I think, shape who you are, I think, and it definitely helped shape some of these women. And it helps to have supportive partners. I think Divyas' story also talks about that. But I think the other sort of learning for me, since I had the privilege of seeing all the essays together, because each writer saw only theirs, right? So I had this whole spectrum to look at, was how that the certain values and qualities seem to just jump out. And I think particularly the spirit of cooperation, the importance of community participation was a theme that ran through many of these women's work. And so many of them insisted that we mention their team members' names in the copy.
Right.
As an editor, I kept writing back saying, what, this is going off track. Can we just cut it? And the answer would come back, no, please, they are asking that we keep the names in. So I saw it. And that, for me, it struck me then that we're talking about a very key value for women who see team play as something that's crucial to their work.
Right.
And I'm not saying that this is a gendered value or a gender-oriented value, but what I'm definitely want to say is that this quality seems to be instinctive and organic to these women.
No, you are right, because I mean, if anyone reads these essays, there is no, it's not extremely congratulatory, it's not preachy, it appreciates work, but not in a way that sort of puts someone in a unrealistic,
on a pedestal,
pedestal.
But that's also the credit of the writers, I think. And then you have to, also you look at the profile of the writers who have written for the anthology. They are accomplished women themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
So many of them are peers, in a sense, of the biologists, who have known the biologists for many years, who have equally, well known in their own fields. So I think it comes from there, in a sense.
And absolutely, that sort of brings out and explains why there's such good treatment of the work as well.
And there is an intimacy of perspective. There is a depth of understanding.
Yes.
So that's why you don't get a sense of we're just like lauding them, and that's a very shallow way of writing about someone. And the women themselves were so upfront in terms of the challenges they faced, the issues that they had. No one shied away from talking about it.
Right.
And I think that's really refreshing, and I think that adds to the quality of the work, I think.
So I really enjoyed reading the book myself, Women in Wild. I'll once again hold it up for the audience to see. And I would also request you to get your own copies. Tell us in the comments below what you thought of the book, because this is something that, everyone should read, not just because of what it says about the women in the field, but also about, our wildlife, the diversity of wildlife that we in India have, and why we need to conserve it. Thank you so much for speaking with us, for giving us this time, and for bringing this book.
Thank you.
And I do hope that it sees success and you get a lot of readers coming back to you.
And we get to come out with volume 2.
Absolutely. I would look forward to it. And thank you for watching. Do follow us on all social media platforms for the latest news updates.